العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين أأتبع من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا جعلنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مركبنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلا تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط وأنا يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلكم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم فاليوم إن الإنسان
That's the correct page. Go back. Oh. He's lost his page.
إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي الخلق له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند مهزمون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وآل محمد.
Zeinab والا بھائی تو ہی بتا دے کہاں لے کے جاؤ لاشیں سنبھالو یا کھمبے کو دیکھو غم کا کنارہ کوئی نہیں لاشیں پہ زینب رو کے پکاری بھیا ہمارا کوئی نہیں ویرا ہے خیمے ہے کالی ہے جھولا تشنا سکینہ کے قصے کو دیکھا کہ ہوئی چور بے آس بیٹی اب تو سہارا کوئی نہیں لاشیں پہ زینب رو کے پکاری بھیا ہمارا کوئی نہیں گریال جوان کی میت ہے آئی کہتی ہے لیلا اے میرے اکبر کس کی نظر تم کو کھا گئی بیٹا میرا سہارا کوئی نہیں لاشیں پہ زینب رو کے پکاری بھیا ہمارا کوئی نہیں بھولی یوروں کے زہرا کی جائی کرب و بلا میں غر لٹ گیا ہے مارا گیا ہے اب میرا بھائی وارث ہمارا کوئی نہیں لاشیں پہ زینب رو کے پکاری بھیا ہمارا کوئی نہیں بھولی یہ زینب اونو محمد اٹھو اے پیارو آئی ہے مادر باتیں تو کر لو بولو اے پیارو غم کا کنارہ کوئی نہیں لاشیں پہ زینب رو کے پکاری بھیا ہمارا کوئی نہیں خیمے چلے اور سجاد کہہ دی کفنی تمہارا کوئی نہیں لاشیں پہ زینب رو کے پکاری بھیا ہمارا کوئی نہیں
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وأديمنا وقليب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا بالقاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوم تشهد عليهم ألسنتهم وأيديهم وأرجلهم بما كانوا يعملون صلوات. On a day when their tongues, their hands and their feet will bear witness against them as to what they used to do. My brothers and sisters in Islam and our holy Imam, Salaam alaikum. My topic is going to be on the rights, one of the rights treaties from Risalatul Huquq. But first, let me tell you about the author. Risalatul Huquq was written by our fourth Imam, Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. He was born on the 5th of Shaban and was martyred on the 25th of Muharram by Walid ibn Abdul, may Allah curse his soul. His mother was Bibi Shahrabanu and his father was Imam Hussain alayhi salam. He was present in Karbala but was ill and unable to fight. As he passed through Kufa and Damascus, he informed all the villagers about his father's martyrdom. Like his grandfather Amir al-Mu'minin, he used to give food and clothes to the poor, and he was very high in his worship, so he got called the famous title Zain al-Abidin, the jewel of worshippers. He lived for 57 years, but his imamate was only for 34 years. His supplication and du'as are contributed to the book of Al-Sahif al-Sajadiyah. People are always asking interfaith gatherings, what should we give during these gatherings? Quran, Natural Balagha. These are great books to give out, but when we ask about them, we are unable to answer any questions about them, and they are difficult to understand unless you ask a scholar. Personally, I feel we should give out this book as it is easier to understand and relate to. Risalatul Hukuk has many rights, but as for time constraints, I will only be focusing on one of the rights in today's lecture. Salawat. Some people don't know, but our tongue has a right of its own, that you should only make it speak politely and only say good things. This basically means that you should not go around the street swearing or anything which will harm someone's feelings, as it will all be accounted on the day of judgment. The tongue is one of the most important limbs in your whole body, and it's the most deadly part of your body. Whatever you say, it is all accountable on the day of judgment. I may want to say an opinion, but the opinion might harm or displease someone. Plato once said that a fool speaks and speaks and speaks, but a wise man only speaks when he needs to. That silence is the greatest wisdom of the human being. Allah has said that the silence is the easiest form of ibadah. Also that a believer's tongue is behind his heart, that whatever he wants to talk, he presents his words to his heart, but a hypocrite tongue leads to his heart. Allah also said that he taught man to express himself. One of the signs of Allah is not just the heavens and the earth, but it's also the differences between your tongue and different societies you live in. Amir Mu'mineen alayhi salam has said that your tongue is more powerful than anything, that it can bring a leader down by only saying a couple of words. A practical lesson we can take from this majlis is that we should not keep constantly talking and try not to offend someone by talking. And this will all be accounted on the day of judgment. Salawat.
الله من قرأ الفاتحة. ما شاء الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين، شفيع المذنبين، رحمة للعالمين، مولانا وسيدنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين المظلومين الهداة المهديين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرض، أرواحنا له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير، الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. صلوات على محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. First of all, we offer our condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam Zamana, Ajalallahu Ta'ala Farajul Sharif, and to all of the Ummah and to each other on this very sad occasion of the Shahadat of our beloved Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wassalam. Before going into the lecture for tonight, I just wanted to pay my thanks and give my admiration and appreciation to the youngsters today, from the Madressa, from the Quran recitation to the Marshia, to the lecture that we heard, and all of the organization which is going on in the background. I think we should recite for them all a very loud Nare Salawat. Inshallah, they are the future researchers, speakers, lecturers, scholars, leaders of our community. The way we had discussed in Ramadan, that each generation, what is the Ahlul Bayt seeking? What is our Holy 12th Imam seeking? Are they seeking that society degrades itself, goes backward, doesn't progress? Is that an idea that we accept? You know, during the time of the Inqilab of Iran, when the revolution was happening, the Shah had announced this. He said that if you are all waiting for the time of the 12th Imam to come, and in Hadith it is said he will come at a time when the world is full of injustice, then you should start doing injustice so that your Imam comes quickly. That is totally opposite to what we believe is our duty. Whether the world becomes full of injustice or not is one matter, but we should be those shining 313 individuals who are going to help the Imam. That is what our goal should be. Whether the rest of the world who is not religious or is not committed to the path of the Ahlul Bayt become more unjust and more oppressive, that's their problem. We must be those chosen few who are going to be helping the Imam. So when we look at our next generation, from the madrasa up, inshallah we see better than ourselves in the next generation. We see a progress, we see an upward movement towards betterment in our future generation. Our children should be better than ourselves, their children should be better than themselves, because the Imam will need people around him. The whole point of having an Imam is that he comes and he leads people to a better future. Otherwise, if he was just alone, of course Allah could bestow him with so much power, he could be a dictator, na'uzu billah, he could take over the world. But that is totally opposite to what the Quran wants and what Allah wants. Allah wants the Imam, who is the absolute perfect being, to have around him other almost perfect beings, or perfect to their possible extent. So we see in our next generation, inshaAllah, with the tawfiq of Allah, with the upbringing of the parents, with the understanding of Jamaat and Madrasa, that we nurture this new group going forward for our future Jamaat and our community, inshallah. With one salawat ala Muhammad. Let us continue our discussion on the subject of niyat and intention. Now, anything that we do in our life, any step we take, from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we sleep at night, every single thing that we do requires an intention. You do not do anything except that there is an objective behind it. It could be relaxation, it could be simply getting ready, it could be going to the bathroom, it could be wearing clothes, it could be getting in the car, it could be walking, could be talking, could be studying. Whatever it is that we do, we are rational beings, we have an intention behind it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse says, تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكِ, glory be to him, blessed be he, in whose hands is the kingdom. In whose hands is the kingdom, وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٍ, and he is powerful over everything. O Allah, show us a sign of your power, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتِ, he is the one who created death and life, to see which of you is the best. The best in what sense? Action. So then we quoted our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq. Someone asked the Imam, what does this verse mean? When Allah says He wants to see the best of action. Imam says, لَيْسَ يَعْنِي أَكْثَرُ عَمَلًا. This does not mean that Allah is looking for he who can perform the most ibadat. I perform 2 rakats, someone else performs 100 rakats. Is that the measure that Allah is going to judge us with? Imam says, no, not at all. He can recite 1,000, 100, whatever amount of rakats he wants. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want kathrat, He does not want quantity. وَلَكِنْ أَصْوَبُكُمْ عَمَلًا. Allah is looking for the most correct action, which is the proper action, which is the action which is quality based instead of quantity based. وَإِنَّمَا الْإِصَابَةُ خَشْيَةُ اللَّهِ. Imam says that when we talk about quality, we mean those actions which are founded in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray namaz. Am I increasing in my fear of God? Do I feel the presence of God more? Am I more conscious of my Lord? Do I feel that I'm actually standing in the presence of my God? Do I feel that He's around me, He's watching me, He's judging me, He knows everything that I do? Do I feel that each and every step I take in my life, I'm contributing something to the life hereafter? Because what will happen is when we pass away from this world and we go over there and we see the fruits of our labor and our toil on this earth, we will recognize it. Quran says that on that day, whoever has done an even atom worth of good will see it. And whoever has done an atom weight of bad will see it. Meaning what? Meaning that I will be able to identify. When I see a punishment, I'll be able to say to myself, this was the missed prayer. This was the ghibat. This was the lie. This was the jealousy. When I see a bounty, I'll be able to say, this was my zikr. This was my majlis. This was my crying for Imam Hussein. This was my love between my family. This was my love to my fellow brothers and sisters. In this way, whatever we do here, we are simply sending it forward over there. And we will see it on the Day of Judgment. So how much fear of Allah, meaning concentration and awareness of Allah, is there in my life after I perform my acts of worship? This is dependent upon my niyat, my intention. Because the intention fuels the act. Whenever I want to do anything, the more strong my intention is, the act is fueled by that intention. Think about a few things. Those marathon runners, how do they do it? 26 miles. They say that every single marathon runner, no matter how fit he is, apart from those who are the world beaters, but the majority of them, they hit something called the wall. Have you heard of this? They hit something called, it's a psychological barrier. They hit something called the wall. Depending on the strength of their resolve at that time, they will either fail or succeed in passing that psychological barrier, which is called the wall. They almost physically are affronted with a physical barrier. It's all in the mind, but it feels at that moment like it's a physical barrier. How do they get across that? It depends on the strength of their intention and resolve. Another example. Have you heard or have you seen or have you read about this phenomenon? That sometimes there have been instances in history when there has been a car crash. The car is resting on top of a child. The mother becomes aware in the heat of that moment. Her adrenaline is to such an extent, and her resolve and love for the child is to such an extent that with her physical force of hand, she's able to move a car, lift it slightly, pull out the child, perform feats which are against the natural order. Physically we would say impossible, but no, in that moment, because of that moment of passion and love and consideration for the child, she's able to do it. Why? It is the intention. It is the resolve, it is the objective. It is all based on what you want to achieve. Therefore, when we say that we need to have a strong niyat in our actions, we mean that we want to bring Allah into our lives through that action. If it stays as a tick box mentality, then believe me, we may not be getting punished for it, but it's not adding anything to our spiritual lives. Tick box mentality means what? Allah says pray 5 times a day. I pray, God knows where my mind is. I don't know what I'm concentrating on. I'm thinking about all my worldly things. I'm praying my namaz. I said Allahu Akbar in the beginning. I said salam at the end. What happened in between? I have no idea. That is a tick box. Oh Allah, here's a piece of paper. I've ticked. I prayed namaz. He will say to me, you will not get punished because you have committed a legally correct namaz, but there's no spiritual value in it at all. So here, we follow the words of our beloved sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu, where he describes the action as correct in terms of the fear of Allah increasing in our lives, and he finishes by saying, وَالنِّيَّةُ الصَّادِقَةُ وَالْحَسَنَةُ. And every correct action is founded upon a pure niyat and intention. Then he says, Al-ibqa'u al-amal ashaddu min al-amal. To remain steadfast on a deed, on an act, until it becomes sincerely for God, is more difficult than the deed itself. Right now, we can hear a lecture or we can read a book about a certain act. And we've all done this. We read about the merits of Quran. What do? We go home, we immediately open the Quran and we start to read it. We hear about the merits of namaz-e-shab. Maybe 2 or 3 nights I'll pray namaz-e-shab. We read about the merits of sajda-e-shukr. I'll start doing sajda-e-shukr. How long will it last? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then it's gone. Why is that? Why does that happen? It happens because our niyat in the first place is not correct. If the niyat had been true, that act would have continued. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam tells us, قَلِيلٌ مَا يَدُومُ عَلَيْهِ خَيْرٌ مِّن كَثِيرٍ يُقْتَعُ عَنْهُ. What a beautiful hadith. Mawla says, the small, tiny amount you do, but you sustain it and you continue it, is better than the massive amount you do, but then you leave it. The dawam and continuity of an act is more important than the act itself being in quantity. This is what we have to understand, inshallah. So, the correctness of the act is founded upon the fear of Allah. The fear of Allah comes from the intention when we perform the act. Again, we quoted last time Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, where he says, Niyatul mu'min khayrun min amalihi. Niyat of a mu'min is better than his action. My niyat, by which I'm doing the act, although it could take even just a second or two, is more important than the act itself. Hajj lasts for a number of days, but the 2-second niyat that I do for my Hajj is more important than the acts of Hajj. Namaz-e-Shab could take me an hour. The niyat I have for my Namaz-e-Shab is more important than that hour that I spend in Namaz-e-Shab. So now let us discuss for today, what do we mean by niyat? What is niyat? We read in books of jurisprudence, in fiqh, niyat is to have an intention that I'm doing this act qurbatan ilallah. I'm doing it for the closeness of Allah. As long as I have that in my mind, my act, my deed is legally correct. But is it spiritually correct? How long do I bear in mind qurbatan ilallah? After I say Allahu Akbar, did my qurbatan ilallah even last until the first takbir? Did it go into Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? Did it go into Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen? I'll challenge anyone here that we are so sometimes fickle in our prayers. Our qurbatan ilallah does not even transfer into the first takbir. It does not even transfer into Suratul Hamd. It does not even transfer into our surah of Ikhlas, for example, or Ruku, or Sajda. It vanishes because it is weak. The niyat itself is weak. Therefore, one true statement which has come to us from the Ahlul Bayt is this: the niyat of a person has degrees and differences. Someone could have a niyat which is very pure and sincere. Someone could have a niyat which is very dirty and polluted. Same act. To my eyes, it looks like the same act. One person is doing it khalisan liwajhillah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The other person is doing it to show off in front of people. How will I know? I will never know. I will observe exactly the same act. But it will become known in the life hereafter. When it goes in front of Allah, Allah will know that intention and that act. So, the niyat has degrees, therefore the quality of the act has degrees. We are going to look at this in terms of 3 different qualities of an act. The first one is, I do my ibadat, I do my namaz, I do all of my acts because I want to save myself from burning in the fire of hell. I've heard these descriptions of hell, full of fire, full of lava, full of punishment, full of horrible drink and horrible fruit and horrible trees, and I want to save myself from that. So I do my ibadat to save myself from the fire of hell. Another niyat could be, no, I'm not particularly scared of the fire of hell as such. I'm doing it because I love the descriptions of heaven. Fruits, partners, spouses, rivers, foods, everlasting bliss, everlasting bounties. I want that in my afterlife. That is why I perform my ibadat. Or the third, which the Quran mentions, warizwanullahi akbar. It says there will be people admitted into heaven. They'll be given fruits and palaces and mansions and everything you can think of. But for them, Rizwanullahi Akbar. The pleasure of God is more important to them. The palace is fine, the fruits are fine, everything is okay, but am I bothered about it? Not really. My true intention is to achieve the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the third type of intention behind an act. So, why does the Quran mention these three, fire, heaven and pleasure of Allah? Because they exactly correspond to the insan's fitrat. The human being has these three things in him. Let me prove it to you with one. Salawat ala Muhammad. Fire and fear of fire comes from the human being's instinct of ghazab or anger. When you are faced with a danger, you become a little bit angry, you become tense, you become stressed, you become distressed. That stems from the soul's quality of ghazab or anger. So fire of the hereafter is fueled by ghazab and anger of the insan. Number two, heaven. Heaven is fueled by shahwat, desires, passions. Because I desire heaven, because I want the things in heaven, I have the faculty of desire inside me. It directly relates to the desire for heaven. And thirdly, the pleasure of Allah. Where does that come from? That comes from the insan's instinct of intellect, aql. Aql-e-insan will desire pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aql-e-insan will immediately be able to decipher from these three. It will say, am I doing this out of a selfish motive of not being burned? How selfish? Am I doing it out of a selfish motive of being rewarded in heaven? Again, that is selfish. But if I do it truly to achieve the pleasure of Allah, this is utter intellect. This is not mixed with anything else. This is why Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam in Nahjul Balagha, short saying number 237, Mawla says, Inna qawman abadullaha raghbatan. There are a people who worship God because of greed. They want heaven, they are greedy for heaven. Fatilka ibadatut tujjar. This is the ibadat of the businessman, the wepari. He wants to gain something. He wants to barter with Allah. Oh Allah, I will give you my ibadat, but you have to give me heaven. It is a business deal. He is a pure businessman, very greedy, selfish. وَإِنَّ قَوْمًا عَبَدُوا اللَّهَ رَهْبَةً. There is another group of people who worships God out of fear. Like as if God is a tyrant and a dictator, an oppressive ruler. I fear Him so much, that is why I spend all my effort in worshipping Him. فَتِلْكَ إِبَادَةُ الْعَبِيدِ. This is the ibadat of the slave. The way a slave has to fulfill the needs and the demands of his master. If he doesn't, he's going to get beaten or told off, or his wages will be deducted, or something like that. He does it out of fear. He has no hamdardi or no compassion or no servitude to his master. He's an employee, therefore he's a slave. That means that when we worship Allah to escape from the fire of hell, we are no more than slaves. وَإِنَّ قَوْمًا عَبَدُوا اللَّهَ شُكْرًا. There is one group of people, however, that worships Allah out of thanks, because He deserves to be worshipped, because they feel that my Lord has given me so much. He has brought me into this world. He has created me from nothing. If it wasn't for Him, I would still be nothing. Therefore, out of a sense of gratitude to this being, I am worshipping Him. فَتِلْكَ إِبَادَةُ الْأَحْرَارِ. This is the worship of the free men. Those who are free, truly free. Here we don't mean worldly free, that we are not slaves, that we are azad somehow. This is a freedom of the soul, where the soul feels that despite anything that happens in my life, I will remain steadfast upon the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know that from the list of titles of Imam Hussein, one of them is Ya Abal Ahrar. Imam Hussein is the father of the free. Why? He showed in Karbala that no matter what happened to him, no matter what difficulty, hardship was put in front of him, he remained steadfast with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was Imam Hussein desirous of heaven? Was Imam Hussein running away from punishments, na'uzubillah? Not at all. He could have done something much easier than this. And he could have submitted to the will of Yazid. He could have given much less sacrifice. He could have avoided coming into Karbala in the first place. He could have been comfortable in Medina. But he chose not to. He chose to exercise his freedom, and therefore today he's known as Abal Ahrar, the father of the free. So, what about all these hadith, the Quranic verses which tell us about the fear of the fire of hell and the attraction towards Jannah? Why does Allah do this? Can I ask you for your opinions on this? If what I'm saying is true, if the true worship of a person is simply to achieve the pleasure of Allah, then why does Allah tempt us with heaven and make us scared of hell in the first place? Why do we read sometimes that if you perform this sin, there is this punishment for it? Or if you perform this good deed, then there is this reward for it? Why? Anyone brave enough to answer? Yes.
If you do a sin, you should at least get punishment for it because you did a bad thing. If you do something good, you should have something good in return.
Good, yes, but why does Allah tell us this? What does He want us to think about?
Is that directed towards those of lesser understanding, as opposed to the people that we're talking about and the people that we're trying to be, who look a little bit deeper and understand it a little more?
Yes, I agree with you. I think it's a starting point, it's an entry point into ibadat. You see, someone who is not used to doing any ibadat, or not used to doing any kind of worship, immediately you put upon them Rizwanullah, pleasure of Allah, seeking the pleasure of Allah, do it only for God. They're not going to understand these things. So as an entry point into the act, Allah gives us the most basic level of understanding, which is reward and punishment. But what Allah expects, especially from people like us, who are born into the religion, who are practicing the religion, who see our elders practicing the religion, this cannot continue. We cannot raise our children with fear and greed. Maybe we were raised like that, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but maybe we were raised like that, but we cannot raise others like this. We must increase the level of awareness of achieving pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. True qurbatan ilallah means that I have no desire for anything else except for achieving the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, if someone now says, I'm doing this deed to escape from hell, that is not wrong. If someone says, I'm doing this deed to acquire heaven, it's not wrong, because the Ahlul Bayt have given these teachings to people. But it's not the best form of ibadat. The best form of ibadat is to achieve Rizwanullah, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now let us look at 2 points and then we move on to the life of our second Imam. The 2 points are, what are the advantages of having this pristine, strong niyat? The first one which I would like to mention is again from our 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq. Imam says, مَا ضَعُفَ بَدَنٌ أَمَّا قَوِيَتْ عَلَيْهِ النِّيَّةِ. We mentioned this point already. Imam says that the body will never feel weak when the willpower is strong. Any ibadat you want to do, there is always a tussle and a tug of war between body and soul. Your soul wants to recite namaz-e-shab, your body does not want to get out of bed. Your soul wants to keep a fast, your body does not want to go through hunger and thirst. Your soul wants to recite a bit of extra Quran, your body is dying just to go into some kind of leisure activity. Yes? There's always this struggle between body and soul. The stronger you make your niyat, the weaker your body will overtake your soul. You will begin to wake up for namaz-e-shab. Why? Because you have a resolve. You have that strong will. You will begin to fast. Why? Because you have a strong will. You will begin to pray extra Quran. Why? You will be able to go and do acts of humanity and charity. because of your strong resolve. So that's the first thing. The second thing which I wanted to mention is that the niyat transforms the act. Many a times we participate in ibadat and worship, and after the worship we don't feel good, we feel rotten. Sometimes we feel, I've just wasted my time. Sometimes, especially in the month of Ramadan or other nights or other days, when there are long a'mal, we feel, I've wasted my time, I did not gain anything from that. We've all felt it in our lives. Niyat can transform the act into a worthwhile act. Think of namaz. Namaz can be mi'rajul mu'min, can be the ascension of the believer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can also be fawailun lil musallin. Woe be unto the prayers of namaz. Woe be unto the namazi. Alladhina hum an salatihim sa'un. When they are doing things without any spirit, then wail on them. Wail means woe, pity on them, afsos on them. They may be praying namaz. Oh Allah, why do you say wail on me? Why do you say afsos on me? It is because your namaz, my namaz, is completely devoid of any spiritual benefit. Alladhina hum yura'un. They pray to show others. Therefore, it's an empty prayer. So the true niyat can help to transform our acts of worship. Inshallah, we continue more next time. Let us turn our attention towards the life of our beloved second Imam, Imam Hassan alayhi salatu wassalam. Unfortunately, when we speak about the life of our second Imam, much of our energy and our time is spent trying to clarify the distortions of history. Our second Imam is a major victim of fabrication of history. History, it's difficult for me to say this, but I think we need to know. History will show that the second Imam was somehow a weak personality. He wasn't courageous. Many histories compare him with Imam Hussein. They say Imam Hussein was courageous, he was brave. Imam Hassan was weak and he was feeble. Many histories narrate about the marriages and divorces of Imam Hassan. Many of the histories, especially written by other Muslim sects and Orientalists, they say that Imam Hassan was a massive divorcer of women. Believe me, this cannot be further from the truth. If you have time, we don't have time today, you can look online at reputable sources and you'll see how they've manipulated facts to show a distorted image of the life of Imam Hassan. If anything, when we look at the life of Imam Hassan, we see an extremely pure, very generous, very charitable, very kind individual who was also very politically aware. We see that from a young age, whenever Rasulullah would pass by the house of Janab Fatima, he would stop and he would sometimes announce, "O family of the Prophet, where is the flower of my heart? Where is Al-Hassan?" And Imam Hassan would run out of the door and they would embrace, and the Holy Prophet would hug him and kiss him in front of all of the companions to show how much he loved this boy. When Imam Hassan would walk into the masjid, if the Holy Prophet would be preaching and giving a speech, the Holy Prophet would command people to let Imam Hassan through, to hand him to the Holy Prophet from arm to arm, from person to person. It was only during the 8th year of his life that the Holy Prophet, his grandfather, passes away. Imam Hassan was only 8 years old. And then of course he had to see the painful departure from this world of even his mother. He then pursues his life and he supports his father. He sees all the tribulations upon Imam Ali, all the imtihan and all the tests upon Imam Ali. He's there in Siffin, in Jamal, in Nahrawan, at the side of his father, always being nurtured by Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, what we see in Karbala is, many people don't know this. People always assume that there was one son of Imam Hassan in Karbala, who we know as Janab Qasim. Actually, there were 3 sons of Imam Hassan that we know of in Karbala. The first is Janab Qasim, who is of course the most well known. The next one is called Abdullah ibn Qasim. And then there is Hassan Musanna, Hassan the second, because he was so similar to Imam Hassan alayhi salam that they used to call him Hassan the second. Hasan Muthanna. Now, what we read about Hasan Muthanna is very interesting. Apparently, the historians say that in Karbala, Janab Qasim and Janab Abdullah are martyred. Hasan Muthanna is somehow, he doesn't die from his wounds. He is somehow rescued by the Bani Asad tribe and they nurse him back to health. He stays over there near Karbala, because as you know, Karbala was a plain surrounding which there were villages. He stays over there in Karbala until the Qafila comes back from Sham. And then he rejoins the Qafila of Imam Zainul Abidin, and then they do the ziyarat all together, and then they go back to Medina together. Now what they say is that in the life of Hasan al-Muthanna, he has then 4 sons. 2 of his sons rise against the Khalifa and are martyred, but 2 of them migrate. One of them goes towards North Africa, in Tunisia, and spreads Islam, brings people to the path of the Ahlul Bayt. The other one goes to Iran and then to India. Now you see, this method of the Ahlul Bayt of going to different places, doing tabligh, spreading the word, you can see some of the effects even today. You know, people say, how did Shiaism reach India to such an extent? How are there small, tiny pockets in Morocco and Tunisia of these Shias who are weakening maybe in faith? But how did they get there? It was through these migrations. And in this way, Imam Hasan al-Islam leaves his legacy within his children and grandchildren. Now, there's one hadith of Imam Hasan which I wanted to finish with. He says, with regards to the way we live our lives, this is a very interesting hadith. I want to get your opinion on it. What do you understand by it? He says, in regard to this world, be as if you are going to die. In regard to this world, be as if you are going to live forever. And regarding the next life, be as if you are going to die tomorrow. What does this mean to you? Would anyone like to try and interpret this? So, in your life, in this world, live as though you're going to live forever. But when you think of the Akhirat, live as though you're going to die tomorrow. Anyone want to try and interpret it? I'm looking for the Madressa students, because today is your event, isn't it? Anyone?
Does this mean that you should live life in a positive way, but never forget? That's pretty much repeating the hadith, to be honest.
So live your life in a positive way, but
Don't forget death.
But why live forever? Why didn't the Imam just say, be positive in your life?
But don't you always have a chance in the afterlife?
You always have a chance in the afterlife, that's true. But why live forever?
To leave a legacy behind.
That's a good way of looking at it. You should leave a legacy behind. So basically, you never know when the world is going to end. So support your world.
Leave some good deeds so people will.
That's another good one. That's another good one. Leave some good deeds, sawab jari. Leave some legacy which is going to earn you sawab. Another thing, I don't know if you guys have thought about this. This came to me when I was thinking about it. Environment. Okay, take care of your environment, take care of your world, take care of the physical space around you. You need to support this place for the coming generations. You would not live in a place that is dirty and filthy and unhealthy and poor, struck with poverty. Therefore, prepare your world for your ever ongoing life. If I was to live in this world, I would treat it much differently than I do now. I would be much more careful about my carbon footprint, for example. I'd be much more careful about pollution, cleanliness, environment, using the natural resources. Because I think it's my son's problem or my son's son's problem, and because I want to give the responsibility to the next generations, then I don't give a damn. But that might be the wrong way of looking at it. So, this would be something useful to share with our non-Muslim friends as well. That Islam does have a regard for the physical space within where we live in this world. Let's recite one salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. In any case, Our Imam alayhi salam was, of course, living at the time of one of the worst tyrants that we have ever seen in the history of our religion. This was Muawiyah. Muawiyah, first of all, was responsible for the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen. After Imam Ali alayhi salam is shaheed, we see that his first support, his first place that he goes to with his bleeding head, with his weakening body, is the lap of Imam Hassan. Amir al-Mu'mineen, it is said in history, puts his head in the lap of Imam Hassan. Imam Hassan is leaning over the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Amir al-Mu'mineen is unconscious. The thing which brings consciousness to Imam Ali are the tears of Imam Hassan falling upon the face of Imam Ali. Imam Hassan, it is said, has cried at that time to such an extent. Imam Ali alayhi salam regains consciousness, looks at his son, and starts giving condolences to his son at that moment. Such was the intense love of Imam Hassan for his father. This same Imam Hassan is then subjected to all sorts of atrocities towards the end of his life. What does Muawiyah do? Muawiyah bribes Ju'ada, and he says to Ju'ada to poison Imam Hassan in such a way that, brothers and sisters, we have not seen such an effect of poison in the other Imams to this extent. It is said that she brings him a drink which is laced with a poison mixed with a glass. And as Imam Hassan alayhi salam drinks this, it has such an effect on his body that it is said that after a while, Imam Hassan alayhi salam begins to spit out lumps of his own liver. And it is said that at one time, the blood and the lumps of the liver of Imam Hassan are coming out to such an extent that people around him are just, struck by the horror of this scene. Imam Hassan there losing his life steadily and steadily. And when he receives Imam Hussein at this moment, they have a brief conversation. And Imam Hassan looks at Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein says to Imam Hassan, "Oh brother Hassan, what a state you are in. Look at your blood flowing." But he says to Imam Hussein, he says, "I may be in this state today, wala yawmaka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah, but there is no day like your day, O Hussein. I may be full of blood here, but I can see you in Karbala. I can see the way you are full of blood in Karbala. I can see the way your beard is full of Ali Askar's blood in Karbala. I can see the way your body is trampled in Karbala. I can see the way that my own son is trampled on the sands of Karbala. O Imam Hassan." But the zulm does not stop here, brothers and sisters. They say that Imam Hussein wanted to simply take the coffin of Imam Hassan through the streets of Medina and put it near the qabr of Rasulullah in Masjid al-Nabawi. And when he takes it there, immediately an order is given by the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt to rain the arrows down upon the coffin of Imam Hassan. This man has left the world. This man has had his ghusl and kafan. Yet the arrows come down upon the coffin of Imam Hassan. It is said that so many arrows came that Janabi Abbas says to Imam Hussein, "Oh Mawla Hussein, let us fight for this." Imam Hussein says, "No." My brother told me that no matter what happens, I do not wish for my funeral to be a source of dissension amongst the Muslims. Imam Hussein brings the coffin back towards the house. Eventually it is settled in Baqi. Before it is put in Baqi, they lift the lid of the coffin and they look at the kafan of Imam Hassan. The white kafan given to Imam Hassan has become entirely red because of the blood from the arrows of the enemies. Allah la'natullahi wa qawmi zalimeen. Wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu. أي منقلب ينقلبون مات من حسين
يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين حق إمام يا حسن يا حسين مولا حق إمام يا حسن يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
You are paraded through the land. You are paraded through the land. Covered your face with holy hands. Covered your face with holy hands. What is booty lay on the sand?
مولا حق إمام يا حسن يا حسين مولا حق إمام يا حسن يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين. Hasan Ya Hussein, Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
To glorify it is what he sought. To glorify it is what he sought. Your father wrote in your support. Your father wrote in your support. Fighting for her, you raise your sword.
Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Imam Sajjad had fallen ill. Imam
Sajjad
Sajjad
had fallen ill.
His painful state was Allah's will. His painful state was Allah's will. Surely Islam he did repeat.
Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Oh Sayyida, oh Fatima, oh Sayyida,
Oh Fatima,
every tear we share with you.
every tear we share with you.
Always you will shout out true.
Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Mawla Haq Imam Ya Hasan Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. In the city of Medina, in the city of Medina, that's the news they heard and cried out in grief. Your saints slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Salam on you, O Hussein, the commander of the faithful. The agony you went through should cause us in the heavens and made them cry out your name. Your same blessings of Allah be on you and all the saints on that fateful day. In the city of Medina, in the city
Of Medina,
thus the news they heard and cried out in grief. Your saints slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Slaughtered and martyred in Karbala,
our beloved son of Fatima.
as he made his way back to the camp from the Euphrates, they cut and severed his hand at the water fell to the ground, and they watched him shout. Your Hussein Shabbos pain at that moment was beyond all expression. And in the city of Medina, in the city of Medina, that's the news they heard and cried out in grief. Your saints slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Asking his uncle's permission to fight on Ashura, executing his father's wish expressed in his letter. Death sweeter than honey, so saying such courage shown by one so young, fighting with the spirit of Hassan. In the city of Medina, in the city of Medina, that's the news they heard and cried out in grief. Now saints slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Slaughtered and martyred in Karbala, our beloved son of Fatima. Salam on you, Al-Mahdi, hidden son sacrifice like the one given in Karbala. In the city of Medina, in the city of Medina, that's the name they heard and cried out in grief. Now sing to them,
in Karbala, O beloved son of Fatima.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
میرے ماں سیدہ، میرے بابا علی، میرے بھائی حسن، ہمیں ہے پنجتن، ہمیں ہے پنجتن، میرے کیا ہے خطا، میرے کیا ہے خطا، میرے کیا ہے خطا، میرے کیا ہے خطا، مجھ پہ کیوں بند کر دل کو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
کیا میں زہرا کے جایا نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں زہرا کا جایا نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں زہرا کے جایا نہیں ہوں، کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو، مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
میرے نانا نے کلمہ سکھایا اور قرآن تم کو سنایا،
میرے نانا نے کلمہ سکھایا اور قرآن تم کو سنایا،
کیا میں نانا کے سایہ نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں نانا کا سایہ نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں نانا کے سایہ نہیں ہوں، کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو، مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
وہ مدینہ جہاں میرا گھر ہے اور مسجد میں اس گھر کا در ہے، وہ مدینہ
جہاں میرا گھر ہے اور مسجد میں اس گھر کا در ہے،
کہ میں اس گھر میں اکیلا نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں اس گھر میں اکیلا نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں اس گھر میں اکیلا نہیں ہوں، کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو، مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
چکیا پی سے فرمان بالا، مجھ کو نانا نے جھولا جھلایا، چکیا پی سے فرمان بالا،
مجھ کو نانا نے جھولا جھلایا،
اپنے بچپن میں بھولا نہیں ہوں،
اپنے بچپن میں بھولا نہیں ہوں،
اپنے بچپن میں بھولا نہیں ہوں، کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو، مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
کیا میں صحرا کے جایا نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں زہرا کا جایا نہیں ہوں،
کیا میں زہرا کے جایا نہیں ہوں، کیا نبی کا نواسا نہیں ہوں،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو، مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو
پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو،
مجھ پہ کیوں بند کرتے ہو
پانی، کیا محمد کا پیارا نہیں ہو، حسین حسین جس دم حسن نے ہائے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے ہائے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے ہائے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے ہائے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، قاسم کا ہاتھ سونپ کے بھائی کے ہاتھ میں، قاسم کا ہاتھ سونپ کے بھائی کے ہاتھ میں، پھر آہ سوزناک سنایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، سونپا تمہیں یہ قاسم مظلوم بے پدر، سونپا تمہیں یہ قاسم مظلوم بے پدر، پھر بولا رکھیو بار خدایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، مولا کے بھائی ہو گیا ٹکڑے میرا جگر، مولا کے بھائی ہو گیا ٹکڑے میرا جگر، ہائے ہائے وہ دشت لا کے دکھایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، بولے حسین پیٹ کے سر دیکھ سوئے چر، بولے حسین پیٹ کے سر دیکھ سوئے چر، اے چرخ کیا ہے تو نے دکھایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، اے کاش آج زہر سے کٹتا میرا جگر، اے کاش آج زہر سے کٹتا میرا جگر، بدلے حسن کے کیوں نہ پلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، جس دم حسن نے آئے بلایا حسین کو، رو کر گلے سے خوب لگایا حسین کو، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین۔